The Manchurian Crisis. Although involved in World War I, Japan was very unhappy with the peace settlement they got out of it. The population of their country was increasing, and because of the 1929 Great Depression around the world and after the Wall Street crash, there was less market for Japanese goods, much more poverty, and people unhappy in Japan. Many people, and the army were part of this, thought that the answer would be to expand from Japan across the sea into China, and that part of China is obviously called Manchuria. People believed this would give them more room for the population, and there'd be another market where they could sell their goods. Since 1904, Japan was allowed to have soldiers in Manchuria guarding a railway line. The railway line is marked on the map there. So they were allowed to have soldiers there. But in September 1931, the Japanese claimed there'd been a huge explosion on that railway line at a place called Mukden. And they said it was the Japanese sabotaging their rightful right to be there around the railway. There is no proof, certainty at all, that an explosion ever took place because the railway continued as normal, but it gave the Japanese the excuse to invade. They quickly beat the Chinese at Mukden. They'd had no permission of the government, but it was so successful and so popular that the army pretty much now decided where Japan was going. So they now controlled the red area on this map of Manchuria, but it's Chinese territory. They were allowed around the railway, but not anywhere else. Understandably, China feels hard done by this, so they appealed to the League of Nations for help. The League's response is to set up Lord Lytton's Commission, which was a group that was going to look at who really was in the wrong here. Japan with an act of aggression, or China by being provocative. Japan claimed that it had gone into Manchuria to restore order after the attack, so this needed to be sort of substantiated. So the Lytton Commission took a year to report, which is obviously a long time. It found that China, and the rule in China was very chaotic, and Japan did have some grievances, genuine grievances against it. But they said quite clearly the Japanese invasion was illegal, and it recommended that the area of Manchuria should just be its own state. The Japanese then reorganised all the bits and pieces they had there, changed its name, was supposed to be independent, but actually Japan continued to control it. In fact, by 1933, Japan occupied all of it. Later in the same year of 1933, the League formally said Japan's action is out of order, you mustn't do it, yada, yada, yada. And Japan turned around and said, fine, if that's how you feel, we will leave the League, and now whatever you say has nothing to do with us. So let's look at the effect of it. It's pretty obvious the League had failed. One of its permanent members had acted aggressively and had got away with it, had held on to what it wanted. So why don't the other countries use collective security to act? There's 5 reasons why not. First point is they did talk about sanctions, but Japan's main trading partner was America, that obviously was not in the League, was not bound to the League's decisions, so sanctions would have been useless. Secondly, the Depression hit every country around the world, so none of the countries, Britain included, wanted to get involved with something when they haven't got the money to do anything, and their people would say, why aren't you thinking about us at home? Thirdly, Britain had no intention of risking its navy over daft little areas it saw it between Japan and China. France make it very clear they're not going to send any troops, whatever. And finally, the one country who was the closest, which was Russia or the USSR, were not in the League, so even if we wanted them to attack, we couldn't have asked them. No country wanted a war against Japan. It was much better for them, with the communist Russia over the other side, to be involved. Manchuria is a long way away. Europeans don't find it's on their doorstep. The problem is this. People like Hitler looking at this, Mussolini are looking at this, seeing an aggressive nation getting away with being aggressive. That's the problem with the Manchurian crisis. It demonstrates to other nations that the League of Nations will probably not act against you if you act aggressively.